If a cruise line did decide in a year's time to say that everybody had to have a compulsory vaccine, they would definitely have to give everybody their money back if they wanted to cancel because they didn't want to have the vaccine. I can't see any way around that. It would not be good for a cruise line to say, you have to have a vaccine, if you don't, you can't come on the cruise, but that's your fault, you can't have your money back. That would be a PR disaster. So I think if that ever did happen, you would have the option to cancel and get a full refund. At least I really hope so, because that's not necessarily what you signed up for. Did you know there's loads of countries right now where you can't go if you've not had certain vaccinations? If you're a child and you're in a place like France or Germany, you can't go to school without having certain vaccinations. Could we see something similar happening within the cruise industry? Could cruise lines realistically turn people away because they don't have a coronavirus vaccine? Maybe. There are really three parts to this question. The first one is, could the cruise lines do this? The second is, would they actually want to do this? And lastly, are they realistically actually going to do this? When it comes to the argument of could cruise lines do this, they absolutely could do this. When you're booking a cruise, when you press that buy button, what you're doing is you are signing a contract that says that you will go on this cruise and you will follow all of the rules. What it says in that contract is that the cruise line can deny you the cruise if they want to. The cruise line doesn't have to take you on a cruise just because you've tried to buy one. It's completely within their rights to turn people away and say no. There are loads of countries all over the world where you have to have certain vaccinations in order to get into that country. If you tried to get into the country without the vaccinations, you would be turned around and you would be sent back home. If you have done a lot of traveling, one that you've probably bumped into is the yellow fever vaccination. There are so many countries that require a yellow fever vaccination in order for a person to get into the country. You have to physically show a certificate that shows that you have had the yellow fever vaccine. And if you haven't, you would not be allowed into the country. It is completely within the rights of the cruise line if they see fit to deny anybody a cruise. They don't have to take you on a cruise. The cruise lines don't owe you anything. Just because they could do something though doesn't necessarily mean that they would want to. Recently, we saw stock prices go up 30% when the news of this vaccine was launched. Carnival Cruise Line went up 30% in the stock market and Royal Caribbean was just over 20%. That is incredible. I think that really shows the optimism around the cruise industry at the moment and how many people think the industry is going to be helped by this vaccine, whether that necessarily means people getting the vaccine and going on a cruise or just generally bringing this pandemic to an end. It is a very good sign. 30% stock price increases is unheard of. It's crazy. The cruise lines are doing a lot of coronavirus testing at the moment, and I don't think that's going to go away anytime soon. Even if vaccines do come into force, they're not 100% effective, so I don't think just a vaccination would be enough to get somebody on a cruise. I don't think we're going to see the end of coronavirus testing for a very long time. It would massively help the cruise lines if they could guarantee that everybody on that cruise had had a negative coronavirus test and a coronavirus vaccine. That would reduce the chance of anybody having coronavirus to a tiny amount. In addition to all of that, it may help more people decide that they feel comfortable enough to go cruising. The cruise industry's reputation has been hurt a lot by 2020, but knowing that everybody has had a vaccine on the cruise, that would definitely be a selling point for a cruise line. Although the coronavirus vaccine does bring a massive amount of hope to the cruise industry and it's only going to do good things, this is a relatively small test that we've had recently. There are loads of different coronavirus vaccines that are currently being worked on, so you know, we've got a lot of fingers in a lot of pies and hopefully one of those pies will be good. Do people in other countries say the phrase a lot of fingers in a lot of pies? Because if you don't, that's strange. We say that a lot here. One thing that might be good for the cruise industry and the cruise industry may prefer is if the countries themselves mandate the vaccines. There's been a lot of talk in Australia about giving people health passports when they've had a coronavirus vaccine to let them travel. And it would be so much easier for the cruise lines if they knew the people that were coming on their cruise had had that vaccine, but they didn't have to be the person to tell everyone to get the vaccine. That seems like the ultimate dream situation for the cruise lines. Even if you get everybody on side, and I know a lot of people don't agree with these vaccines, even if in an ideal world everybody agreed to have the vaccine, the people that are going to be priority to get the vaccine are not going to be people that want to go on a cruise. It's going to be the people that work in healthcare, the people that work in retirement homes. It's not going to be people who are thinking, I need this vaccine because I want to get on my cruise. At the moment, this current coronavirus vaccine requires 2 injections and it does take a little while. There are a lot of different companies that are making different vaccines, which does make things a little bit more confusing. What you wouldn't want to happen is, say Australia restarts cruising and it requires everybody to have a coronavirus vaccine. It would not be good if they said, you have to have a coronavirus vaccine, but we only accept these brands of vaccine. We don't accept the vaccine from the US. That would leave them in a terrible mess, and I don't know how they would sort that out. This does raise another question for me though, and that is, what about the crew who are on these cruise ships? Say the cruise lines did decide in a year's time to make the vaccine mandatory for everybody who's on the cruise ship. Say you're somebody who works for a cruise line, you're halfway through your contract, and then your employer comes to you and says everybody needs to have this vaccine. That's not something a cruise line's going to want to do, because maybe all their crew don't want to have the vaccine. So I'm not sure at the moment where they would stand on vaccinating crew. If they required all of their passengers to have vaccines, you would think that they would require all of their crew to have vaccines too. Personally, as soon as that vaccination is available, I will be there. I will be in the back of the queue probably. I would like to be at the front of the queue, but I'm a healthy 26-year-old, so I'll wait in line. I'm definitely ready to get the vaccination when it is out though, not just to cruise, but generally to get back to normal life. We don't know enough at the moment about the vaccinations. If they become incredibly easy and cheap to produce, they're everywhere, everyone can have them, they work incredibly well, the cruise lines may move towards compulsory vaccinations, but at the moment there are no signs that that is coming in the short term. We also don't know at the moment how long the coronavirus vaccine lasts for, so it could be a case of everybody having it every single year. At the moment, we just don't have enough information. If we do see compulsory vaccinations, I think it's going to be very, very far into the future, maybe in a year's time. I'm feeling that 2021 is going to be the year where we're testing everything out, we're returning to cruising, we're ramping up the number of cruise ships that are sailing, but I can't realistically see any of the cruise lines saying that in 2021 the vaccines are going to be compulsory. I don't know that cruise lines should make vaccinations compulsory though. This is not what a lot of people signed up for, and you're going to have a lot of unhappy passengers if you start imposing this on them. So I think we're just going to have to wait and see what happens. Let me know in the comments if you would be happy to have a vaccination to go on a cruise, and we'll check back on this video in a year or two's time and see how wrong or right we were. I mentioned earlier in the video that when you sign a cruise contract, you're agreeing to the cruise line's rules, but I bet you don't know what you're actually agreeing to. Check out this video next that goes through everything you're agreeing to when you buy a cruise.